Hello and welcome to today's Autodesk Virtual Academy, brought to you by Katif Technologies. I'm Umbayak. No, I'm Nigel Umbayak, application engineer here at Katif, and your host for just about every AVA. And I'm joined by
Jorge Fernandez.
And Jorge Fernandez is one of the project managers on the Katif team. And so if your organization is being delivered a service from Katif, you're probably talking to this guy.
Yeah.
So today, we're going to be going over Autodesk ReCap, and we wanted to kind of introduce some of the products in the product design and manufacturing collection that we feel are underutilized by customers, this being one of them, right? If you go through your Autodesk account and see, what products you have available to you, if you have things like suites or collections, generally you know what the AutoCADs of the world are, the inventors, vaults, etc. And then there's a bunch of tools you might not be aware of or know what they do or why they're even there. And we kind of want to open everyone's eyes to what this tool is capable of doing, why they've included it, because they wouldn't include it in the collection or suite if it wasn't going to be valuable to the customer. And so Jorge's going to answer some of those questions today of what it does, why you want to use it, what kind of use cases, so on and so forth. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, the reason we chose this topic was we were actually getting a lot of calls on this where some people know they have ReCap, but they don't know exactly what it's for or how to use it. How do I get started? Wait, there's a couple things going on here where it doesn't make sense with the collection or the suite I have. So We'll definitely cover those things today.
Yep, and we'll cover over, there's a couple flavors of ReCap too. They've changed names, they've included products, they've kind of merged a bunch of things, and you might have been aware of a few things a couple years ago that might be something else today. So we're going to kind of uncover all of those things and kind of unfuzz or unfog, I guess, some of those questions that people do have. Like I mentioned, if you have any extra questions, go ahead and type them into the GoToWebinar chat panel or YouTube chat or Facebook chat or whatever chat you're on. If you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, go ahead and leave a comment in the video and we will get back to you ASAP. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. And yeah, expect to be here for the next half an hour listening to this man's voice.
All right, so as we mentioned, we've been getting a lot of calls on this, so we thought it'd be a good idea to go over some of it. There's definitely a whole lot it can do, so we're going to go a little bit of an overview, and I think you'll find that some of these things could have a whole other session all on its own as well. So let's start off by, what we're going to do is we're going to go over what ReCap is, what it can do, and a couple scenarios that we've seen some people use it for. Some people for personal matters and some people for business matters as well. So what are the challenges it's going to solve for us? Think of these three different scenarios for examples. A lot of times we have things that are already built out there, right? If you're in the piping industry, for example, you might have the as-built piping, and you might want to add some more to that, make some modifications. And maybe you're working inside of a facility and you're making some changes. And think of how difficult it is to get accurate dimensions out of that. I know when I worked in the industry, one of the first tasks I had is we had to be compliant with OSHA standards. So I was tasked with going out there and modeling all our machines because all we had was 2D AutoCAD drawings, make sure we got them at eye level and document completely where they were going to be at. So I was going out to the facility and, just documenting it on my engineering notepad. And I had my measuring tape, no calipers needed. It was 1,000 square foot machines or bigger. But that can be a very time-consuming task, not to mention, oh, I forgot a dimension. Well, what if the facility is not where I'm at? What if the facility is out in Texas, out in Florida, out in Europe, right? So those are things I know some of you might already be experiencing. Maybe you have an old design that there is no documentation for that you can't find, and you need to maybe do a retrofit or something like that. I know this is a little bit of an exaggeration in the image in the middle, right? This one's pretty rusted out. You might just replace the whole thing. But what if that wasn't the case? Maybe you needed new supports. Or even if you're looking at custom fit designs, right? Think of orthopedics, custom consumer electronics, and things of that nature. So we can start to solve these challenges using things like ReCap. Because ReCap, what it really does is it captures reality capture. And this can be done by laser scanning or photogrammetry, right? Which means really the science of being able to take images that are reliable that you can take measurements off of, right? So that's really what ReCap is going to allow you to do in a few different ways. And again, here I have some examples of different things you might use it for, right? You might have an existing site you need to make some changes to, maybe some renovations or new construction. It might be easier to do it that way if you don't already have that, especially as you start to transition or you start adopting more 3D modeling. Sometimes just as reference, maybe you have something already and just moving it within a facility, but you don't want to have to redraw it. It might be easier to just take some pictures of it or a scan, or like I said, a custom fit. So those are, some of the different things that you can use this for, right? And so when you're doing laser scanning, there's a specific workflow that goes with it too, by the way. So this information is available through Autodesk as well. I thought I'd put it here together for us as a summary. Basically, you have to create a project, and then you're going to import the scan. When you import the scan, then it goes and registers it, which really means that it's going up to the cloud and stitching it all together. From that point, then you index it and bring it into the ReCap software to be able to navigate it, fly through it, figure out what parts of it you actually need so you can edit it. Therefore, you can then start to measure, mark up, annotate, and share it with others or download it for yourself to be able to reuse. So there's a few more steps when you're looking at laser scanning and doing maybe drones, depending on exactly what devices you're using. If you're looking at doing photos, then it's somewhat similar, but a little more simpler at the same time, where you create your project, you bring in the photos, and I'm going to show you some examples I did from my own phone, my own iPhone. Again, you do have to upload it and have it stitched together and registered, if that's what they call it. And then you can finally export or download it as well, so you can reuse it. So those are the processes that you would have to use for this. I'm going to show you some examples right now, some different use case scenarios, and then what we'll do is we'll come back and look at some tips and tricks when you start wanting to implement this for yourself as well. So let's go ahead and jump into the live demonstration piece. So the first example we're going to take a look at is I'm going to start up ReCap. So to do so, I like to go to my Windows and use my shortcut by accessing it this way. When you access ReCap for the first time, ReCap, by the way, comes with collections and suites. There is ReCap and ReCap Pro. I'll bring that up a little bit later and summarize what the differences are. If you are a suites customer, product design suite customer, you get ReCap. If you are a collections customer, you get ReCap Pro. Right now, what you're about to see, the example I'm going to show you, is part of what you get through ReCap. So if you're a suite customer, you have this capability. And it's to be able to bring in point cloud data. So that's someone going out to a site, creating a scan by bringing out a laser scanner, and then you're able to bring in that information. Now, when you bring that information in, you're getting an as-built. You might not need all the information, so you can actually come in here and modify it. What you're seeing right now as I brought this up is you're going to get prompted for ReCap Pro, even though you have ReCap. I'll bring this up again later because this is important, right? This is one of the things we keep getting calls for. I want to make sure this is very clear for everybody. It'll start off with a 30-day trial of ReCap Pro. Go ahead and run the 30-day trial, and you'll still be able to use ReCap. Once the 30-day trial is over, it'll just go back to ReCap, just standard ReCap, not ReCap Pro. So just wanted to make sure that was clear for everybody. I'll bring it up again later. So it does give you some options, or some tips here on how to start using ReCap. Of course, there is a lot of great videos out there, both from people from the Autodesk community as well as Autodesk. When I come in here, you're seeing some recent projects down here at the bottom. But over here where I say new project, I can start a brand new project and bring in a point cloud, and I can also hit open here. When I hit open, I already have this point cloud data here, this RCP file, a ReCap project file, that I'm going to open up. So as we look at this point cloud data, what is that? It really is I'm going to zoom in here further. It's a group of different points that make up the geometry that you're looking at. So someone would come in here, go with a scanner, and put it at different points and make sure they have markers in place so that they can actually get this scan going. So that's why you see all this here. You notice it even comes in with the actual coloring. This is the as-built, right? So the scenario we're going to look through right now is, well, this is what we have right now, but we need to replace some of these machines. These are going to be moved. A couple of these are going to be retired. But we want to make sure we have the right space for it, that we know where the columns are, we know where the walls are. There's even some HVAC up on top as well that we want to account for. So I'm rotating slowly through here. Hopefully you're not getting too much lag over the internet here, but it actually does rotate pretty smoothly. Now what I'll do is, there's some information here I don't need, as I mentioned. So I can come over here and say, well, I want to edit this box here, this limit box. I can click on the top surface here and drag it down, and I'm not deleting the geometry. I'm just making it so I can actually see through this and start working through it. So I can actually see the top of it and start deleting some of this if needed. So I'm going to confirm this, and that's my limit box. As I move through here, I'm going to go to top view. I want to remove all this information inside of it. So we can do that a few different ways. We can just do window selections. We can do a fence. You can even do a plane. What that means is if I click all these areas right here, I'm going to click on and make 5 points. I'll hit enter, and it picks up all the points on that plane. So once I do that, I can actually hit delete, and I've now deleted that entire surface. Of course, we have more geometry. There's other ways we can do that as well. As I mentioned, we did a plane right now, but I can actually do a window also and just do a simple selection here to remove everything except the columns. We'll hit delete. And we still have a little bit left on the columns, so I'll just go back to my top view, zoom in a little further, and get rid of those points too. Just a little more cleanup, as you see there. So the essence here, the reason I'm using ReCap, right, is to take in this point cloud data and make it something I can reuse. There are more options here. You know, today we're doing an overview, and like I said, we can always, I think it might be beneficial once we hear some comments from everybody to maybe go back a little deeper into some of the other settings. But basically we have some visualization settings here to be able to see, you know, what are the elevations we're looking at, for example. Maybe change the lighting so that we can see this visually a little bit better. We have some navigation tools, and you see some pop-ups come up in case you're not used to this type of software, of course. And if we have tagging going on in here, we can search through it as well as access the information on the cloud if that's where we're saving it also. All right, so now that we've done this, why do we want to use it? Like I mentioned, we want to use it as reference, make sure we plan around this. A factory floor in my scenario here. You know, imagine you're, like I said, you're bringing out these lathes, maybe you're putting in some new ones, some new CNC machines or some new storage space or something like that. So what we can do is, I'm going to go over to Inventor as one of my examples, but we can use this with other products such as Revit for architectural. We can also use it with Navisworks as well, AutoCAD, and Inventor. So inside of Inventor, I'm using the factory design utilities. As I do that, again, I'm going to go to a top view here, and I'm going to go ahead and attach from ReCap. So go right back over here. And you see here, I'm able to click and drag, and I'm actually moving this around right now, and it's moving pretty fluidly, right? I think I just have some snaps here that might be getting in my way. But I can go ahead and put it right here, tell it to basically go to 0 here for my Z and go onto the actual ground floor itself. And now I'm able to rotate through this and see the facility with my new lathes, because remember, I deleted the point cloud data on the inside, and I only had a limit box on the ReCap software, so I can view the inside of it. And I can start to see, oh, I do have some clashing here. This gib crane, for example, where I plan to put it, it's going to get in the way of the HVAC system, so I might want to put that gib crane somewhere else, right? So we can start to see some of that capability here, that being able to empower ourselves, right, to make sure that we're designing this the way we expect it to be designed. And if you go and use something like Navisworks, you can do clash detection as well and make sure that you're not running into the different areas, and it'll actually highlight them in red. So this gives me a nice little reference point just to kind of fact check myself, if you will. All right, So that's ReCap. Everybody who has a suite or a collection will definitely have that capability to bring in that point cloud data and reuse it in other software like this. Now we're going to jump into some of the stuff that ReCap Pro can do. So ReCap Pro is going to allow you to take in, again, laser scans and allow you to take in photos that you can reuse and bring in for different purposes, right? So I'll go ahead and bring up ReCap Pro now. And part of ReCap Pro, you get what we call ReCap Photo. If this was a class, I'd ask for you, for those of you that have heard of some of the other products like Remake or Memento, to raise your hand. Some of you might have even seen an app from Autodesk for your phones called, oh shoot, I just forgot. Do you remember what it was, Nigel?
They change them all the time.
I think it was 123.
It's 123D.
Yeah. So we used to be able to do it with those, but now they brought it all into this one package, so you don't have to go from one application to the other, and it works together. So with ReCap Photo, I went ahead and created my own so I can be able to give you some tips. So you see some of the examples I have at the bottom here. I was working with the mic stand that we're actually using for this AVA and thinking about, what if I wanted to redesign it? You know, what would I do to that? How would I want to capture that, other than maybe taking my calipers out, right? Of course. Maybe I want to either use it for reference or be able to actually re-engineer it a little bit more. So what we're seeing here is me having taken, I think it was 34 pictures in this scenario, with a background that made it so that this wasn't too reflective. You see there are some areas here where it didn't quite capture just that great, and that's because the material on this mic stand has some reflection to it, and it's not able to capture it as good as something that's not as reflective. So stay away from reflective material is a big one, or there are other ways to make sure it's not reflective. Like you could buy a spray chalk that can be cleaned off afterwards too, by the way. I'll actually bring up some videos and some stuff I found as I was doing some more research for this. One of the things that we can do here, you notice that if you look at my orbit, I'm actually upside down, right? So there are things that we can do in here to modify it. So I can change the settings and transform this model. What you'll notice is that I can come in here and I can rotate this so that it puts it into more of a view that I'd like to work with usually as well. And then we have the origin plane too, so we can know where the actual plane is on the bottom. So I'll go ahead and apply that just so that I can use the view cube a little more easily. We also have in the model settings the scale in units. One of the first things that I'm sure a lot of you are thinking are, well, what about the size of it, right? What do I need to do to make sure it's the right size? So when you do this, it brings up a box of it. So this is why it's important to get the bottom of the origin of this on it, so you can give it a reference dimension so it scales the entire thing. So you can do that as a percentage or as a specific value if you want to as well. We have some more editing tools here as well, where we can slice and fill. So we can literally say, well, you know what? I just need to slice it from the very top. Maybe I want to take off this top portion and then fill in the rest. So that can come in handy. You also have surfacing tools. When you do that, you'll notice that it breaks it down into a mesh. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit further. I'm going to use my shortcut keys by holding down the right key, click on my mouse. And I can rotate around. And notice this area here is kind of rough. So I can use this brush size here and the strength of it to be able to try and smooth this out a little bit more. So I'll bring down the brush size and maybe the strength a little bit too. You might want to kind of start off small as you get going with this first. And then you'll notice I'll try and move slowly here, make sure there's no lag over the internet. And it's changing those quads, this mesh, to make it a little bit smoother. As I move through this, I can sculpt this as well. So if I wanted to drag that geometry out a little bit more, I'm going to commit to that, go back to sculpt. And then I have, again, the ability to select my brush size and strength, what type of brush tip I want, and if I want to push or pull the geometry. So if I want to push it in, for example, I can click this, and you'll notice that I'll kind of push in this geometry right here by just holding down my mouse. And I'm purposely making it go, very slight, right? But I can definitely increase the strength on this and make more drastic changes to it. I like to use the smooth quite a lot. That way, I can really smooth this out and make sure I get a flat surface. But you might be thinking, well, why do I even want to do that? Why do I want to smooth this out, you know, and get a flatter surface? Well, maybe we want to reuse this. What we can do is we can actually make this mesh much smaller and take it into things such as Inventor or Fusion, for example, or any other 3D application, so that then we can export this out as an OBJ file where it'll come in as a mesh. So I think it was Inventor 2017, I believe, Nigel, where we were allowed to start bringing in mesh.
I think, yeah, it was one of the 17 service packs, or it might have been 18 RTM. But yeah, it was pretty recently.
Exactly. So now we can start bringing this information in, so we can either use it as reference or start to actually modify it a little bit more. What you would do is you'd come over here and you'd export the model. Notice if you have Pro, you also have export video tool here, so you can actually create a video that you can export to show to somebody or take to a presentation, just an image. And when you export the model, then you choose what type you want. And so if you do want to take it to something like Fusion, for example, you do OBJ quads, and it's going to want to take it down to 10,000 faces or less. So that'll be huge right there. It won't let you do more than 10,000, depending on how big your product is, of course. Then you might want to bring that down a tad. And then I'll make sure Y is up here, and then we can export it out. I'll show you a couple more examples real quick. Oh, let me tell you how you bring in the images. The way you do that is you click on Object here, and then you click here so you can browse to the folder. You browse to the folder where you have all your images, and you know what? I'll even open up the images here so you can see really quick. I went ahead and just stepped all the way around this and started taking images. You're seeing one of our break rooms there. Be able to get that. Now, I did it really rough, as you notice here, but you'd want to zoom in there a little bit more. It's going to automatically pick up by looking at different reference points on the actual model itself. So you can take a top view picture, for example. Maybe you want to get this little area here, this curvature, a little finer, because maybe you want to keep that. You know, the more pictures you take, the better. But you do need at least 20 images, and you can't have more than 250. So when I select all of these, then what happens? I'll go ahead and select them all. There we go. It starts loading them in. It puts them all in here for you, and then you hit create. I won't do it right now, so it doesn't take up more of my bandwidth, but what it does, it uploads these files to your A360. So if you go to your A360 site, you'll actually see those images in there, and then the proprietary software stitches all that geometry together, lets you know when it's done through an email, and then you can actually download it. And so when you download it, what you're doing is you're able to, I'm gonna cancel this project. Then it'll give you this RCM file. That's a ReCap photo file. You see some of the other things I have in here. Like I did a lot of different examples to play with. You know, how shiny can I actually get? How many pictures do I really need? For you Star Wars buffs out there, I got a Poe here from Pop. And so that's another example, but an even better example is I took even more images. Sorry for those of you that might not be Dodger fans. I'm a big Dodger fan here, and I have an older bobblehead here. But I took even more pictures. I took, I think it was 48 pictures, almost 50 pictures. And I was able to get a much more detail. And look at that, even in the face. So think about when you want to do this to do like a custom earbud or orthopedics or something like that, right? You can have much more detail. I went and took pictures going all around it, and then I took top pictures here. And then I took pictures right here where I have a bat missing, and I thought about maybe modeling that. But I didn't take pictures down here. So again, if you just take your camera in underneath and you can take those pictures, you'll get much better quality. I've seen some examples, like from Travis from Autodesk, someone that presents here as well on AVA quite frequently, or he even had a Christmas light display, and he had an ear that broke off from Goofy, and he literally just took a scan, and he was able to model that ear and then get it 3D printed. So, you know, there's a lot of different reasons why you can use stuff like this. You're seeing me doing it with these smaller products, but you can do more than just that as well. You'll notice here I have a chapel, for example. And this one's an Autodesk example, by the way. So you saw me use the tools right now to, you know, be able to modify this. I can smooth this out right here, like this transition where we couldn't get a picture on there, for example. But you can also use tools that you see down here at the bottom for rotation tools right here. And then you have visualization tools. And then you have selection tools. So all this geometry you see out here, for example, I'll just go to a quick top view. We can select all this. Whoops. Do that one more time. And we can delete all this geometry. Make sure it doesn't get in our way. We can use this as a nice little rope here, this lasso. I like to just kind of go around it all here and then just trim out some of this information I don't need. Like you see there. You notice there's other areas too. Like if I move down here at the bottom, there's this void. And so this void, what would we do with that? There might be different reasons for it, right? It might be that, hey, I want to actually extrude that. So there are extrusion tools here in the edit commands where we can smooth boundaries, we can bridge gaps, we can extrude it, as I mentioned right now. We can also fill holes. If I go to fill holes, I can actually select this geometry. It picks up the entire boundary, and I'll say I want a flat right there, and it's going to go ahead and fill in that information for me. Ta-da! I'll go ahead and exit that out. And now that area is covered up. So you see there's a lot of nice tools if you have ReCap Pro to be able to modify this a little bit further instead of just bringing it in as reference as is, right? There was one more thing I wanted to bring up here as an example. You know, I was mentioning how you might want to take this into something like Inventor or Fusion. So I went ahead and took this chapel and brought it into Fusion. And the question I'll get is, if it's not just for reference, what can I actually do? Can I actually edit it? Yes. Remember I mentioned we can export as an OBJ quads. We can change that into T-splines as well. So there's a convert tool inside of there. Well, then I can actually edit the geometry and push and pull the geometry and use all the sculpting tools inside of there. So I'll go over here to one that I already did and open that one up. You know, I've seen a lot of examples too, by the way. Think of people who maybe create car models out of clay or something like that, or even I've even talked to some people that do things like jacuzzi designs and things of that nature, where they can take the scan and then now they can modify it, right? They might carve it out of foam or clay or something like that. Now I can actually pick this geometry and I can edit it and push and pull it. And the way we did it was by coming over here to our utilities and converting the quads to T-splines. It didn't take very long for this one. It took, maybe about, I think it took about 2 minutes to get it converted, but I thought I'd save us some time and have this one already converted for us. You know, then you can actually, you know, we see this cross here, for example. We can come in here and edit this and push and pull it, maybe make it flat on here by adding more geometry to it. So we now have more capabilities than we ever did before. I wouldn't necessarily call it a reverse engineering tool necessarily. It can start to help you get there, right? But it's not intended to be a true reverse engineering tool, just to make sure that's clear. All right, so I want to wrap up by giving people some recommendations on some of what you just saw. Again, we've scratched the surface. I definitely think we can go even further into some of these tools and examples. But if you're looking at what types of devices you can use, you can have laser scanners, you can have cameras, or even just your iPhone will work as well, or Android or Pixel, you know, whatever different phone you have, that definitely works. That's what I used. You can use drones or UAVs as well. There are some more tips than what you're seeing here. There are some videos, like if you search for how to take photos for photogrammetry, you'll find some YouTube videos on there. There's one that comes from Autodesk that gives you a lot of great tips. Again, You have to take at least 20 photos, and it'll give you a warning, by the way. If you start uploading it and you don't have 20 photos, the software will let you know that. I like to take about 50 to 60 to make sure I get more detail. As I said, you can take top views and zoom in and get different views of it, and it'll still work great, but you can't do a max more than 250 images. Definitely avoid reflective materials. I tried this mic stand a lot, and I didn't think it was even that shiny, but it was picking up all the geometry around it, and therefore it wasn't able to give me the full model. I had to try a few different things and make sure I got the contrast right. So, and then there's ways around that by buying that chalk paint that you can actually remove afterwards. That would work great as well. There's also markers. I have a link here, for example, where Autodesk, if you go to the forums, someone actually posted on there some examples that you can use for ReCap. I'm not sure if people are interested in a link for this. Maybe Nigel can go ahead and provide that for you guys.
Posting.
Oh, there you go. He's got it covered. So we can come over here to the ground photo to 3D projects, and they have some examples so you can kind of start to see what you might need and kind of try and replicate that. You'll see some markers as well. This will help out greatly in order to make sure you can just print this out and put it underneath so that it helps pick up the different points of reference to be able to connect the dots, if you will, or stitch these different images together. So you can just print this out, put it on the bottom of your model, and take the pictures that you want to take.
You just want to be able to distinguish your product from the background. And this is a really good way to do that. Another thing that I've seen people do is they put like Post-its and markers and stuff. If you see people laser scan in general, like facilities, they put stickers everywhere. And those stickers are, so it makes it really easy to stitch the products together. Usually they're super contrasty compared to the actual product that you're scanning or maybe facility. And you want to be able to do that so that when the program starts stitching it all together, it understands like, hey, this bright orange dot is this bright orange dot everywhere. It makes it a lot more easily scannable.
Exactly. Something you're seeing here in this video from Autodesk is like this crystal skull here, or this glass skull, I should say.
Crystal.
Thinking Indiana Jones. This geometry typically wouldn't work unless you use that spray paint chalk that is washable. In this example that they're showing, this person wanted to try out different outer image, or I'm sorry, images that they wanted to put on this skull, right? So, really what you can use this for is pretty endless, I would say, right? There's so many different things. We can now really start to be more creative with the projects we're working on.
Yep. And like Jorge said, the more pictures that you take, the more detail you're going to get. It's pretty straightforward. I know Jorge was doing like 30, 40, 50, 60 images. I'm going to try this weekend with 250 images or something. And we're going to see how that comes out. And hopefully I get something really cool.
And if you do that, Nigel, make sure you do a lot of overlap too.
Exactly.
That was one thing that I kept running into where I wasn't getting the fine detail. What you want to do is you want to make sure at least 40% of the image overlaps.
Yep. That'll
give you a better result.
Yep, exactly. Zooming in and zooming out of certain areas too. And don't worry about like holding the camera at different orientations, and so on and so forth, because the program will end up picking that stuff up. It'll look for like surfaces and things like that. The thing I want to do is reflective. So I'm going to have to come up with some strategies to make it.
The chalk paint, I'm telling you, man.
Exactly. Also, you don't want to have your background the same color as your stuff.
Oh yeah,
that's
we ran into that.
All of the walls here at Kativ are the same color as the stand, and so Jorge had like the most interesting model, and that's just something that just watch out for.
A few other notes, real quick. You can't, if you're using Pro, you can manually stitch the pictures you get from laser or from drones. And something else that can definitely be a whole other session probably. There's a lot of things you can do there. The stitching that you saw me do in ReCap Pro with the ReCap photo, where I sent it to the cloud, it does take 12 credits to do that. So those are cloud credits. Luckily, we have quite a few here to choose or to use, and we were able to run quite a few, but it does take credits to do that. Also think about, like, if you do have a facility, a place that you'd like to be scanned, that there are contract scanners. We actually have a couple as well. So if you are in need of looking for, you know, someone to do some of that scanning for you, we can help you there too. And again, if you have a product design suite, for example, or one of the building design suites or civil or infrastructure suites, you have ReCap, not ReCap Pro. If you have one of the collections like AEC collection or product design collection, you actually have access to ReCap Pro. And under your subscription site, you can say who actually has the ability to have that login, because you will have to log in. If you have Suite, you have ReCap, and it will prompt you at first for ReCap Pro. Use the 30-day trial. Once the 30-day trial is done, then it'll just default back to ReCap. Okay. If you have any questions on that, let us know. I know that's a question we're getting quite often right now on our Lifeline team, but let us know if you need help.
Yep, we got some cool comments like you can use athlete's foot spray instead of
really
some fancy stuff. that's a good one. So if anyone's got some foot issues, might already have some stuff you can make stuff non-reflective.
And I've gone ahead and made a list here for everybody for reference, but Autodesk does have this. If you just type in ReCap versus ReCap Pro, it'll show you what's included in both. So I just summarized some of them. So remember we saw at the beginning where we brought in the point cloud and we were able to adjust it a little bit, remove some of the information so we can reuse it. That's basically what you get with ReCap, and you can still export those files and use it with Navisworks, Inventor, AutoCAD, Revit, you name it. If you have ReCap Pro, you get that video creation tool we talked about. You get some more advanced measuring tools as well, so you can actually get some measurements between the different faces.
Yep, and ReCap Photo.
And ReCap Photo, right, which gives you also the drone features. You get to do a web preview and collaborate with others as well, and be able to see it on a mobile app, so you can actually view, measure, markup on an iPad, for example. In summary, again, 20 to 60 images where you probably want to start, you know, if you do need to use the ReCap Pro features, the photo features. And it's great for capturing existing designs and facilities, your as-builts, and so you can move forward and not have to go out to the facility all the time, right?
Packaging.
Yeah, and avoid reflective material.
Yes.
I struggled very heavily with that. It's almost like I wanted to challenge it, but try and avoid it or use these workarounds. Like, would you say athlete's foot spray?
Yeah, I guess. And there's another one in here. It's like baby powder. Does baby powder work? You know, we could go on and on. You know, there's a lot of like bodybuilders downstairs. We could use some of their like protein powder. Maybe we'll try that later.
All right. So do we have any questions to address, Nigel?
Definitely. We do have a lot of questions. Just want to make sure that everyone knows where to put those questions. If you have any, there's a questions bar at the bottom of your chat panel. Go ahead and type any questions you have in there. I know a lot of people are returning AVA viewers, so you probably already know how to ask the questions. So let's begin. First off, we got a question. What programs can open ReCap files?
Navisworks, Inventor, AutoCAD, Revit, and infrastructure. Civil 3D.
Civil 3D. And then is there a way to export those files into some kind of like native mesh format, or not native, non-native mesh format, some kind of universal mesh format, right?
You know, really, what I've been using is the OBJs. That's been the most successful for myself. Yep. I know there are some other files you can do as well, but that's usually the one we're using, especially because we're typically taking that mesh and reusing it, right?
Yep, exactly. All right, I'm going to go ahead and read through some more of these questions. Just give me a minute to expand my question bar, because it is very small right now. Cool. Good friend Jonathan Lenderos was reminding us that product is 123D Catch.
That's what it was. Thank you, Jonathan.
And Brian Kelly too, like right after. That's pretty good. It's makes sense. It's like those people would know. So, all right, let's go ahead and take a look here. Let's see. And this question's from Brian. Will Revit Suite do photo import, or do you absolutely need Pro?
You don't have to have Pro, but you can do it with ReCap. You just have to have the point cloud. You won't be able to, you know, do that meshing and editing and all that, but you can take in the point cloud and edit that
Right.
with the suite. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't take photos
Right.
and put it into regular ReCap and then have it stitch them all together for you.
Right.
That's something you need ReCap Photo for, and ReCap Photo comes with ReCap Pro.
Correct.
I know it's very confusing. It's like how there are like 70 fusions. If you have any questions and need some clarification, reach out to us, and we can clear any of that up for you. I know I have questions like that all the time. So let's see here. Will ReCap Pro stitch the photos on a local PC, or do you need to do it on the cloud?
On the cloud. It is on the cloud.
It is the cloud. And it's the same cloud that everything else Autodesk related sits on. So if you have any questions about that, let us know. And it's something like 12 cloud credits every time you stitch something. We happen to have like 1 quadrillion, so it's like not a big deal. But for those of you who do have current subscriptions, maintenance and stuff, you do get cloud credits automatically when you buy your software. So use those. You have them already. So. Are you able to recommend 3D laser scanners? I was looking into Faro Technologies.
You know, the Faro one is the one I've heard of the most, definitely, from the people I've talked to that have done the scans. Unfortunately, I don't have a list of scanners that I can recommend, but we can definitely ask the two.
We have some sources. We have some people who do scanning as consultation work for some of our customers, and we can ask them what they use if you want to try to tackle it yourself. Or if you are looking to get contracted out some of the scanning work, we have the resources for that. So definitely reach out to us if you do have any questions about that. Let's check what else. Would you compare ReCap and any other software? Is there like a equivalent?
There is. I'm trying to remember the name of it right now. I think it's I want to say Geomagic is one. I can't remember the second part of that name. But really, that really is a reverse engineering tool and scanning tool. So that's the only other one that I've definitely heard of, more prevalent out there. As far as which one's better, I can't give you an honest answer on that. I haven't used that tool myself. I've just seen it in use by customers.
Geomagic Design.
Yeah.
And Control X. Thanks, Alan, for that information. So I guess that's something that Alan has done a little bit of research on. Anyways, I think that is just about all the questions we have today. But before we go, we want to leave with a couple of announcements. Jorge, do you know what next week's AVA is?
Oh my God, I don't know. Tell me.
Oh my gosh, it's like he knows but doesn't want to say anything because he wants me to reveal it or something. Well, anyways, next week is the beginning of our annual, I guess you could call it annual now, we've been doing it for 3 years, the annual What's New series, in which we have Autodesk product managers join us and our team to talk about the new releases. So if you've looked in your Autodesk account in the last couple of days, you've probably seen some products appear. Things like 2019 versions of Vault, AutoCAD, Inventor, and more. But in the next couple of weeks, we'll be going over 2019 releases. We're going to start next Thursday, April 5th at 10 a.m. with Irvin Hayes Jr., product manager at Autodesk for Inventor and Vault. And we're going to be talking specifically Vault 2019 next week.
See, I didn't want to steal that thunder. You did so great.
It's questionable. But so next week, we're going to start with Irvin with Vault 2019. The week following is going to be Lauren Welch, who's done probably half a dozen of these AVAs for us so far, going over what's new in Autodesk Inventor 2019, which is, I know, a big one for a lot of our users. Last year, that was one of the largest AVAs that we had. A couple hundred people watching. It's pretty awesome. And then the week after that will be AutoCAD. So just be on the lookout for those three. You'll probably see those emails come through with more information. Obviously, we record them all. I know people can't, be on every Thursday at 10 sometimes. So definitely be on the lookout on our YouTube channel for those things. Beyond that, I think that is just about everything for today. Again, Jorge, thanks for showing us Autodesk ReCap and ReCap Pro.
Yep, no problem.
Yep, and if you want to see more recap in the future, maybe you want to look at some specific workflows, please let us know, and that's something we can explore doing in an AVA in the future. If we don't hear anything that people want to see recap, want to see other things, we might prioritize those other things. So if this is something you are truly invested in and you want to learn more about, please let us know, and we'll make more of it. So with that, again, I'd like to thank everyone for being here today, and we'll talk to you all next week with Irvin Hayes and what's new in Vault 2019. Cool. Thanks. Have a great weekend, everybody.